And good evening, and it is a very good evening, and a podcast I have been looking forward to doing for the last couple of days for quite obvious reasons. And it is the 18th, I believe, in the series. We started around about October, November time, and we've been going more or less once a fortnight since. And we have been building up to this because all the way along we've been discussing how Arsenal have been progressing in their competitions. And of course, they are, well, they've won one. Let's not beat around the bush here. And we're going to discuss it this evening as well as the other competition we're in. So I'm going to introduce the panel. And first of all, distinguished writer from my days as the Gooner editor, and I believe still contributes, is Mr. Peter Beau. Next up, we have an AST board member, and do you still do your online blog, Phil, these days?
I haven't done lately. No, it's just got rarer and rarer and tailed off. It still gets quite a lot of views though, because there's a lot of sort of historical pieces like where did 1-0 to the Arsenal come from and that kind of thing, which people look up, and therefore like the blog still gets views.
Refresh my memory what the URL is.
That is angryislington.com.
There we are. So it is a welcome along to the author of that prestigious particular area of the internet, Mr. Phil Wall. And finally, last but not least, another old-time Gooner contributor, kind of dropped off the scene for about 15 odd years, and then we bumped into each other. And now we are, well, we're going to be in Budapest together. It's good evening to Mr. Simon Cardwell.
Hello, Kevin.
All right. So, gents, I mean, let's start with the obvious. Arsenal, after a 22-year wait, are the Premier League champions. The first thing I'm going to ask is what you did on Tuesday evening itself, starting around about 7:30 and ending up when your head hit the pillow. So I'm going to start with the one which I know was at the stadium afterwards, because I've seen you on, I think it was Facebook or Instagram or somewhere, but there was a post. So Simon, tell me about your Tuesday evening. Where, when, what?
So, of the four of us that go to the games together, my friend Chris lives near me in Walthamstow, and we said after Burnley that we would meet up on the Tuesday, and we gradually upgraded our plans from just going to the local place here in Walthamstow to going near the stadium. And surprisingly, a few of our group didn't really fancy doing it, so it was just us two. We got the tube to Finsbury Park. The places right at Finsbury Park were already packed, so we walked up Blackstock. We went in the Gunners. We had a look in the Woodbine, and it wasn't really quite the right vibe. I feel like you need like a big pub for this because, as you all know, it gets a bit raucous for these occasions. So we flipped over to the Gunners. It was absolutely rammed. It couldn't have been busier. There was not an inch to move in there. It was, and for me, the one of the best things about this is that you get to see all the people who perhaps don't get to go to the games and perhaps don't have tickets, because let's face it, quite a lot of us that go are older males, and we've got the money and the access to the tickets. So there's a completely different crowd of people. There's a lot of young people, and we watched it, and as soon as it finished, left the Gunners, walked to the stadium. There was people pouring out of every doorway and pub and tube station. And we stopped at an off license on Gillespie Road near the Golden Fish Bar, if you know where that is. And it was about a 20-minute queue to get in there and get something. Filled up a bag of drinks. My friend Andy, who I sit with, he was on his way from St Albans, so he had basically aborted a family dinner that he was in the middle of with his in-laws. And basically halfway through it, he basically said, "I've paid for this dinner for you, but I'm also leaving because I have to go to the stadium." So we met him at Arsenal and we walked around, and we were just up at the top of the staircase on the raised bit. So yeah, we were there. We then had a wander around and then came back. And I think I got home about 2:15. So yeah, it was quite an eventful evening.
So I mean, just tell me, I'm picturing lots of people singing chants, a lot of people drinking vociferously, perhaps
Yeah.
some hugging and dancing. Um, it was a vibe as much as
I
anything.
probably hugged about 40 people I've never met. Yeah, it was packed. It was the atmosphere was incredible because it was spontaneous. It was entirely spontaneous. So there was people arriving for about the first 45 to an hour. There was still more and more and more people coming all the time because presumably a lot of people it takes a while to get there. But like I say, there was a different crowd of people to a typical match, certainly from the away section and from the bit where we sit at home. It was a bit of a different crowd of people. But yeah, I mean, I think I heard every Arsenal song, new and old, across the time. And yeah, it was pretty well managed, really. I think the police seemed to take a hands-off approach, and they seemed to be happy to let it go. And a lot of people in their cars beeping. I find there's less of that than there used to be because in the 90s and 2000s the beeping would go on all night till about
Mm.
4 a.m. So there's less of that. But I kind of wonder about, what goes through someone's head when we win a trophy to think I'll get in my car and drive around for a couple of hours beeping. But there is a section of fans who do that. So yeah, all the way every street was jammed with cars, and even when we got back to Walthamstow, so I think we got an Uber from St Thomas Road home, and when we got off on the corner of Wood Street in Walthamstow, there was people singing about Gabrielle, and there was people banging their horns on Fulbourn Road and Forest Road here in Walthamstow. So yeah, it was a unique evening because it was so spontaneous, so completely different to post match and just a different crowd of people.
Wonderful. All right. I'm very much doubtful, but out of sheer fascination. Did you see my son there? Just
I did not see Frank. I text as many people as I could, trying to drum up people to come and meet us, some of whom did. And strangely, there was a few people who didn't bother. And I'm kind of like, I think you'll regret that because you're a couple of tube stops away. You can get there. It's free. Why would you not come and join in? Yeah.
all right. Well, Peter, I'm going to put money on this. I suspect you weren't there. How did you experience
You,
Tuesday
you know me so well. No, I mean, compared with Simon's experience, I'm so boring. You might want to gloss over this quite quickly, but um, I've been telling people for a couple of days that Bournemouth were a very good side based basically on how they played against us. And I thought there was a very good chance that they would take points off Man City. And everybody said, no chance. And I decided to watch it at home. And with about, and this is a terrible thing to admit, 10 minutes before it kicked off, I actually got a real attack of cold feet. And I thought I'll leave it and I'll keep flicking back to it. And I just almost was paralyzed at watching the thing because I was so concerned about jinxing and everything. And then my phone lit up, and obviously Croupier had scored. So I had a quick flick through, and I thought, blimey, Bournemouth are really giving City a game here. So the second half, I was sort of, watching it, but sort of still very, very sort of worried about sort of jinxing it and what the outcome might be. And then when Haaland scored, I mean, I don't know how long it was, but it must have been a minute and a bit left, and that seemed to me to be about 20 minutes. Um, when that finished, I live in Kent, so and a long way from. So I literally wouldn't have. I might have been able to get to the ground at sort of gone midnight. But I decided that I'd phone and talk to a lot of friends. A lot of my friends and family phoned me up. My phone lit up with messages from people, and I got myself a very large Irish whiskey and just watched the coverage on TV, and it was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I think it was a great evening. I so envy people who were there like Simon, but it just wasn't going to be possible for me.
Okay. I personally also watched the TV coverage, partly because I was also spending all the time responding to messages, and I actually quite enjoyed just finishing off a bottle of red and taking it all in. I mean, I'm of an age where I've done my jumping around, I feel so.
Yeah.
I was resisted the temptation to join my son
I
there.
would just like to add there, Kevin, it was definitely a younger person's thing because there was people of all ages there, but there was predominantly teenagers, 20 somethings, and seeing those people who've not experienced it for I was with two friends who were kids last time we won it. So, seeing their reactions as one of the key parts of the evening too. And also I video called four or five people who were not close enough to get down there and let them. I rang a friend in America and a couple of friends who were too far away and let them soak a little bit of it up. So yeah.
Yes.
It felt very much like the vibe we saw in Fever Pitch in '89.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was it the same?
I wasn't there in '89.
Yeah.
I was a kid in '89, so I
Mm.
watched it. I watched '89 at a neighbour's house, and they all supported Middlesbrough because I grew up in the northeast, and they were all supporting Arsenal because they were just bored of Liverpool winning. So my memory of that. But yeah, I mean the footage you see in Fever Pitch, it felt a bit like that. And yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, all these people who've never, if you're under 30, your memories of us winning the league are when you were a kid. So yeah, it's a whole new
Mm.
thing for a couple of generations of people.
Yeah.
Mm.
Phil, what about your experience of Tuesday evening?
Well, I've very similar to yours, Kev, to be honest, except for the bottle of red. But I have to say, I had pretty low confidence in Bournemouth. I didn't think they'd get anything. I thought we would have to go to Palace and win. I really thought once, even after City dropped points at Everton and we were back, it was back in our own hands. I thought, well, they're just going to win every other game, and we'll have to win every other game, and then we win it because we weren't going to win it on goal difference the way we're playing. Too many 1-0s, too much George Graham Appreciation Society there. But so I wasn't planning on doing anything special. I just thought it was going to be another evening where City got close to us, and we would then have to go and win at the weekend. So I tried. I spent most of the evening trying to avoid what was going on in the game because it was thinking about it was making me too nervous. I didn't want to watch it, and it was only when Bournemouth went ahead, and then my son, who's up at university in the Midlands, texted me or WhatsApped me or whatever, and said, and he was saying, "Well, City aren't going to score two, are they?" And I said, "Well, I wouldn't bet on that. They normally score three." And he was saying, "But Bournemouth haven't lost since January," and he was more confident than me. I was still thinking, "Well, I'm not counting any chickens here at all." So I was just sort of waiting for an equaliser, which eventually came, and then I was thinking, well, luckily there were only 30 seconds left or something at that point, so I was just praying that they were going to hold on, and the overwhelming feeling at full time was relief. It wasn't so much celebration; it was just relief, really, because I honestly thought, are we going to blow this? Are we going to end up with nothing? And City have done the treble again after the season we've had, and that would have been such a letdown. So I just had this overwhelming feeling of relief and was very happy to sit there and watch the TV. And as you know, I live out in leafy Buckinghamshire, so it would have been a struggle for me to get down to the stadium. If I lived 3 tube stops away, I'd have been straight down there, no doubt. But I wasn't going to go. It's sort of an hour and a half away. And at my advanced age, Kev, much like yourself, we've done our jumping around in the past, and this is all it's a fabulous experience, but it's not a new experience for people as old as us. So I was happy to sit at home and watch show Hart eat humble pie on Match of the Day, basically,
That's
which was quite
very
enjoyable.
incredible. I mean, I was just astonished to hear his words because he was so magnanimous after, frankly, laying into us. The only thing missing was Shay Gibbon, frankly, who
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If they're gonna wheel him out, whipped him a bit, and then thrown him off to the side again, that would have
Who was
made
worse out
the
of
night
Hart
better.
or Given
not
in
given.
their
Oh, yeah,
post-match announcement?
definitely. There is just
They were
a
both pretty poor.
hint of objectivity about Hart occasionally, but
But the
Gibbon.
strange thing about Tuesday, Kevin, I was never nervous. I was never nervous. I thought there was a solid chance because, like you say, they hadn't lost since January, and I thought there's a solid chance they'll take a result. But watching the game, I was never nervous because Bournemouth were a couple of levels like above. Like they were fantastic. A part of me was absolutely gutted for them because they should have won 2 or 3-0. That should have been a convincing win, and it would have put them into potentially the Champions League. And they could well still make it, but they were fantastic on the night. And then when Haaland scored at the end, it went deathly silent for about a minute in the pub. But I just couldn't see how. I've just never seen how that City team was going to win a treble because if you've watched them. They were just never that great, really. Their defense is shaky, and I just looked at it and just thought, I just can't see it. The fact that they had unsold tickets for their game against Palace last week, you were like, they don't believe. So if they don't believe, you're doing some mental gymnastics if we believe that they're going to somehow do it. I just never thought they were going to. I never thought they were good enough.
Well, fair play to you. I must confess, I saw absolutely nothing but a City win on Tuesday night, and the odds were 4 to 6 on a City win. And I thought if you put £1,000 on that, you'd make 666 back. But as I've retired from the world of gambling, I resisted the temptation, and thank God for that. But it looked like it's easy money to me because I just couldn't see them not winning. Do we actually think that the mini fixture pile-up they had actually affected them on Tuesday night?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I
They're
mean,
knackered. Yeah.
if you go back to when Bournemouth beat us, I think they'd had either 2 or 3 weeks of prep, and we'd played in Lisbon, we'd played a cup game, we'd been playing, and they were fresh as a daisy, and that was a big reason why they beat us here. And in this game as well, I think they'd had a week or two to prepare. They looked fresh, and City looked knackered. This is why when we got knocked out at Southampton on the train back, I said to I said to my mate Andy I was with, who was quite downbeat, and I said to him, "Look, this opens up the calendar for us because to me, I was always looking at the league and the Champions League as the two that I wanted to try the hardest in. The cups were bonuses to me. The League Cup ended up being a bit of a waste of time playing all those games, and the Cup, if we'd gone through in the Cup, we'd have played Newcastle and Burnley would have both ended up being additional midweek games. And do you think that we could have sustained it with those two additional games? Because at the point of the Newcastle game, I thought we were maxed out completely, and I was looking at us thinking, I don't know how we're going to keep this going because we look like we're at the limit of what we've got to offer. But then the Fulham game, we found that if you want to win the league, you have to find that extra space that all the teams that win the league find in April. You find that extra place and you go and win the games. And that was how it fell for us.
Yeah, but I mean, let's just think about the night before Man City's draw at Bournemouth. Obviously, we had to win, and we did win, but it didn't feel like a title-winning performance, to say the least.
No.
And it's interesting to reflect that, and it's possibly the age of my memory, but there haven't been that many games in which, in fairness, at least in terms of our football with the ball, okay, we've looked like a title-winning team. It doesn't matter, of course, because we have won the damn title, and the fact is that we probably have won it because of the defence and the goalkeeper. However, how did you feel on Monday night? Did you think this looks like a team that's going to win the title by going to Palace and getting the 3 points? Or did you think, I'm a little bit concerned here because I'm not seeing what I consider a dominant performance, which is convincing me.
Well, you're right. It wasn't a dominant performance on Monday. But the way I was thinking was, well, it's only two more matches. Sorry, it's one more match in the league and one more in the Champions League, and that's all we have to win now. So even though it wasn't a great performance, I was still thinking, well, all we got to do is win two matches, and we've got two trophies. So I was kind of fairly optimistic from that point of view, thinking, we've won 40 odd matches this season. How hard can it be to win two more? And one of them's only against Crystal Palace. So I was fully expecting we would need to win that. But I wasn't particularly downhearted by the performance because we've had quite a few, as you say, quite a few of those performances, and there were a few early in the season which were really good performances and really stretched teams and broke them down and some teams that came to the Emirates that looked as though they didn't have a clue. They couldn't work out how to play against us. We were dominating everything. And then it's just kind of got harder and harder as the season's gone on and turned into more of a grind. So I just thought, well, if we can grind out two more games, then we're all right. I was just thinking, well, we have to win the two games, or at least we have to win one of them to win one trophy, two to win two trophies. So we can do it. But I wasn't, as you say, it wasn't a great performance. But I was pleased that people seem to come through mostly uninjured or unbruised, and most of the squad fully fit at the moment, I think. So I think we're still in with a very good shout at the Champions League because of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I always find myself, because of my age, I can remember winning the title at White Hart Lane in 1971. I was locked out there, so I don't have great form in actually seeing us clinch these things. But what a lot of people don't recall was that on the Saturday, when we played that on the Monday night, on the Saturday we were at home to Stoke, who were extreme. They were like they were a much better footballing side than Stoke under Tony Pulis, but equally dirty and unpleasant. And we'd lost 5-0 to them in the season. We'd had nearly gone out of the FA Cup to them, and we played them at Highbury on the Saturday, and the game was awful. It was a much, much less convincing performance than we gave on Monday night, where we dominated. I mean, Burnley didn't have a shot on target, but in the last minute of the game at Highbury, John Radford, of all people, cleared the ball off the line. So, I remember trying to get into White Hart Lane and talking to an Arsenal fan. He said, God, I hope we play better than we did on Saturday. That's no way. We're never going to win the league like that. And then we produced, as you probably would expect us to against Tottenham, a sort of epic performance. If you think of, and we all remember 1989, you remember the background to it. We had those two home games where we lost to Derby, and then we drew with Wimbledon, and we were pouring over. How the hell were we going to go to Anfield and win by 2 goals? So there is a lot there, and it's interesting what Simon said about the Fulham game, because we got ourselves into this sort of this rut of very unconvincing, sort of 1-0 to the Arsenal, but God, don't want to go through that again type games. And Fulham was just completely different. I mean, we just played beautifully, and we could have won significantly more than we did. We played really, really well, and then that sort of flipped a switch for me, really. But there's such a lot of tension involved at the end of it, and I think to answer your initial point about do you think the games that City played had an effect? I think it had a huge effect. And also, I mean, I didn't care about the cup final. I watched it sort of out of one eye while it was on, but I didn't really care. As soon as the whistle went, I switched off because I didn't want to see them lift another trophy. But for them, it was probably a big emotional thing. They've won the FA Cup. They only won that rather unconvincingly, 1-0. So I think it took quite a lot out of them, and I was hoping it would go to extra time and penalties, but it didn't. But I think
We all
they,
were, yeah.
I think that game, I think they won the Palace game quite easily, but I think the cumulative effect of those three games was significant. Yeah, and as Simon was saying, Bournemouth. I mean, but the way Bournemouth play, and they, the doubt about Iraola, who I think looks a brilliant coach to me, is that his teams press so frenetically that if they had to play 60 games a season, they'd need a squad of about 50 players. But give them 2 weeks off, and they are a very, very serious handful.
Well, they'll be Champions League possibly next season, or if not,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Europe.
there's a pretty good chance they're going to make it. I mean, if as long as they stay ahead of Brighton, as long as City beat Villa,
Villa will be in fifth.
yeah,
They have to be
as long
fifth.
as Liverpool don't lose to Brentford, I think is the
Well, it's
Well,
results that
Villa
they
have
need.
qualified, haven't they? Villa are in the Champions League anyway because of winning last night.
Yeah, exactly. You'd
yeah,
imagine they'll win in
yeah.
Pep's last game at home. You wouldn't imagine Brentford would win at Anfield, so you'd imagine that those results are very realistic. And so long as they stay ahead of Brighton, if they don't, Brighton will take it. So that'd be an equally unusual story, wouldn't it? But can anyone remember the game at home to Derby, 1998, on the Wednesday? It was a 1-0
Yeah,
with a Emmanuel
Pet-
Petit goal.
Petit. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
game was kind of like the Burnley game, wasn't it? It was a
Mm,
1-0 against a team we were expected to beat, and we had to kind of grind it, a little
mm.
bit of nerves. I was expecting to beat Burnley pretty comfortably, but I think the reason we haven't, if you look at City, they only beat them 1-0. They got a point off Villa last week, and I think if you look at their caretaker coach, Michael Jackson, I'm guessing that he's auditioning for the job in this little stint he's had in charge. And he's saying, why don't you give me the job next season? And they're actually putting up a decent fist of it. They haven't been losing 4 or 5-0. I know they've conceded a lot over the season, but in this period with him in charge, they've been just losing by the odd goal here and there, similar to Wolves. And I think if you look at the league table, I mean, we just talked about it there. Fourth place on 62, fifth place on 59. 59 points is going to
Mm.
get, so a maximum of 62 is going to get you in the Champions League. And we all know from our many years of finishing fourth that you typically needed about 70 points. So that points to me that the league is a lot stronger and a lot more even. And there's a lot. And if you look at the points difference, I mean, it goes from 59 all the way down to 50. There's only 10 points between fourth and the bottom half of the table. So it's a pretty congested table generally. There's a lot of good teams. If you get Bournemouth or Brighton or Brentford on a good day, they can beat you. If you get them on an off day, you'll probably beat them 2-0. So they're all a little inconsistent, but there's a lot of strong opposition. And yeah, that I think that's the main reason more than anything for having a lot of 1-0s and 2-1s because there's just not teams who just, you know, 10, 15 years ago, teams would be on the beach in the last month, and there's very few teams doing that now. You're seeing it, every team in the league still turning up and still trying to win games. So I think it's just changed a lot over recent years.
Yeah, I think the concern for me at the end of the Burnley game was simply that it meant that assuming City did actually win both their games, then a draw at Palace was not an
Wouldn't
option.
be enough. Yeah,
Mm.
That was my
Mm.
personal fear.
yeah.
And as I've said before, I honestly thought City would just find a way to win and win convincingly at Bournemouth because I
Were
think,
you looking at the Burnley game as a chance to perhaps up the goal
yes,
difference a
I
little
was
bit? Yeah,
thinking Everton 5-0, was it? Or Leeds 7-0 back in the days when we were still at Highbury. And
yeah,
one of them was the Invincible season, the other one was 2005. End of
yeah,
season romps, basically.
yeah.
But of course, we had a different forward line than we have.
Especially when City only got a 1-0 at Burnley. I foolishly was thinking, well, that might be a chance to get the
If
goal
you
difference
think of
up.
some of
But
the points that City have dropped, I mean, they took 1 point against Spurs, for God's sake.
yeah.
I mean, they have had some disastrous results.
The
Spurs are
Everton,
their bogey team, though, aren't they? Spurs are City's bogey team generally at the moment.
Seems that way.
yeah,
How weird is that? Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Bournemouth and Everton games should have been comfortable defeats. When it was 3-1 at Everton, there was a penalty shout turned down, and the Bournemouth game should have been a comfortable loss. So, on another day, they would have been 3-1 and 2-0 or something instead. But they somehow managed to rescue draws out of both of them. Luckily for us, they didn't somehow turn one of them into a win.
Right. Well, let's consider domestic matters now, and just consider the possibility that going forward in the next 2, maybe 3 seasons, Arsenal seem to have their act sorted out in terms of a squad that can deliver. And Pep Guardiola is leaving Manchester City. Okay, they're going to get Maresca. Liverpool seem to be in some kind of chaotic situation where they're not sure if they're going to stick with Arne Slot, and they are too late to get Alonso in. Manchester United are just a completely unpredictable. Who knows what's going on there? It seems to be very odd that they can't seem to string together the kind of sequence that is going to convince anyone that they're going to return to their glory days anytime soon. Chelsea, we just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with Alonso, although I have to say I do think that he is a decent coach and probably the best appointment they could have made. So I'm a little concerned about that. But do you think there is the possibility that Arsenal could actually win, for the sake of argument, a couple more titles in the next 4 seasons? How optimistic are you?
I think I'm fairly optimistic for next season. I mean, you could argue that the champions are always the favourites at the start of the next season, and with the bookies, they generally are. Liverpool certainly were favourites at the start of this season. That soon changed. Well, actually, they went 5 points clear, didn't they? After about 6 games, and then it suddenly changed. But as you say, Kev, the other what you would consider the main challengers are all in some kind of transition still at the moment, or will be in City's case. So it is a good chance to kind of consolidate Arsenal's position and really, I mean, really, I say really go for it. They should be really going for it every season, so it really shouldn't be, shouldn't be an argument. But I think there's a good chance, because at Chelsea they could come good, but it's more likely to take a season or two for changing some personnel there, getting them sorted out. Carrick's doing a good job at Man United, but I don't know if he's going to do a good enough job to properly challenge. City could go in any direction. So I think, it's a very decent chance to get back-to-back titles. Yeah.
Don't forget, I know you've got to be careful about what we say here because they deny all charges, but I understand, I've been told that there's eventually going to be some sort of verdict in the City, sort of 115 charges, or is it 130 now? It's only taken 2.5 years to come to something. If anything negative happens there affecting City, it could be pretty cataclysmic for them. Chelsea still face 74 charges, so one would, that's not an ideal backcloth. And as we were saying, Manchester United, have been a bit of a roller coaster, and Carrick hasn't got great experience. They've got a decent squad, but they haven't got a particularly great defence. And they're looking beyond there at a team that can actually sustain, a title challenge. It's actually very hard to see them. Probably the best team, one of the best football teams is Villa, but Villa tend to go up and down a bit, and they haven't got the squad strength that they'd need to sustain that sort of challenge. Emery has never won a prize of that size. He tends to win the second tier competitions. And I understand that Villa have got serious PSL problems and may well have to sell Morgan Rogers or somebody like that. And that's going to affect their chances, I think. Whereas I think if you look at the Times today, we have we are going to post pretty spectacular financial results. So we could be in a position to strengthen even further next season.
Weren't Villa at one point spending something like 93% or 95% of their revenue on wages, which is kind of astonishing and completely unsustainable. So unless they can do what we've done, and Spurs have done that too, which is increase your commercial revenues, I don't really see how that will go anywhere. Man United, I saw a stat the other week that every week they've played 2 games, they've lost a game. So I think instructional in their run is probably the fact that they've had a light fixture list. They've had the rarely seen 40-game domestic season, which you don't see very often. And I've got a good mate who's a Middlesbrough fan, and he does not rate Carrick. He was laughing when they appointed him. He thought it was hilarious because they didn't think he was good enough at Middlesbrough. So I don't know. I mean, ideally in that situation, I think what you would want is you'd want it to be like a Solskjaer situation where it's apparent he's not going to be the answer, but they stick with him for a prolonged period anyway. Because Man United are a bit like Arsenal and Liverpool, where they all take quite a long time to change managers. They're not like Chelsea or someone who just are trigger happy in that regard. So hopefully that, if that doesn't go well. And I mean, Enzo Maresca, I mean, compared to Pep Guardiola, it's a different world, isn't it? I mean, no one's Pep Guardiola. There's no one in the world they could bring in to replace Pep Guardiola because that magic dust that he has, where, as we were saying, that they got battered at Everton and Bournemouth and somehow came out with results. I don't see anyone else doing that. And the amount of times they've just pulled something out the fire and ended up winning, you know, they end up smelling of roses when they look like they're going to do the opposite is kind of astonishing. So I'm looking at them and thinking, and also you've got to bear in mind Bernardo Silva's leaving. They're not going to have their team of winners. I think there'll only be Haaland and Rodri left, and Rodri maybe has injury issues. Perhaps he might not be able to ever fully shake off. I'm not sure on that. But Chelsea, until Chelsea change their policy, that won't really go anywhere. They can keep changing manager, but until they change how they buy player, how they buy and sell, I don't really see them ever really threatening. And the way I often look at it is I look at other teams and think, how many of their team would you want in in our team? And I look at most of the others and think very few. Obviously, Manchester City have a few. I do think Liverpool, with a better coach, could get a hell of a lot better. Obviously, they're losing Salah and Van Dijk's probably peaked, but they have still got Isak and Verts and Ekitike and some other pretty talented players in there. So I look at Liverpool and City and think there's a few players in those teams you'd like to get if you could. The rest of them, I don't think there's a single player, is there? Is there anyone from any of those teams that any of you would want to sign?
In which teams, Simon?
United, Chelsea, Spurs, Villa, any of them really. I mean,
Villa, I wouldn't mind signing Morgan Rogers.
Yeah,
I
maybe
think he's
one.
a very, very good player. But no, I take your point.
There's not going to be many, is there? There might be one per club, maybe two, but that's about it. So
it's a fair point. I think
As you say, there's a couple at Liverpool, but other than that,
yeah,
I
not a
don't
lot.
know. I don't think so. I mean, you mentioned Spurs there. I'm really not sure why you put them into the mix.
More for the comedy.
Why we want to buy players from them?
More for the comedy more than anything. I thought it was time we mentioned them.
I think sorry, Kevin. I said I think we can. Even now there's this sort of slightly curmudgeonly approach to Arteta. I mean, Arteta has got significantly better as a coach over the 6 years. I mean, he came in as a rookie coach, and he's transformed Arsenal, and it's incredible. Sort of, we are a side that are arguably one of the two best sides in Europe and league champions, and I think he will get better, and that's a big issue. And who would you want instead of leaving Guardiola aside in charge of the club as coach rather than Arteta?
Well,
So I did.
I'm going to stop you there, Peter. I'm going to put this to you. Okay.
Mm,
I was at West Ham away,
mm,
and honestly, it may have been tension in the away section. I'm not sure. But the amount of vitriol that was being delivered at Arteta, to me, it was genuinely disturbing from Arsenal supporters who I thought, why aren't you getting behind the team? I know it was a foolish decision to move Declan Rice to right back,
mm.
but it's been made, for God's sake, get behind the team rather than start effing and blinding about the way we're playing, because we weren't losing. We weren't playing particularly well. I'll give you that. Um, we only improved. I think Odegaard came on and things started happening in the second half. But what's interesting to me about this season is that Arteta has been proved right in his approach because we finished first. And yet there is a very significant feeling that I get in the stadium that is actually not approving of the way Arteta gets his results. Now, I wonder if that's going to be revised because he has been proven it's actually the way to do it. Because we are a very different team from the one we saw in 22-23, which was absolutely fantastic to watch, and yet fell short by whatever it was, 2 or 5 points. I can't remember which way around it was. So, I mean, do we think this style of football is going to continue? And if it does, what do you think the fan perception is going to be to what often looks like Arsene Wenger's old horseshoe of doom, with the ball making its way from one side of the pitch to the other around about the halfway line?
I think that tactic of just keeping possession at all costs and moving the ball around at the back in lieu of actually moving forward and taking any risk whatsoever, that is so frustrating for supporters, and especially when you know that the players are good enough to do so much better. It's just unbelievable watching it and sitting there in the stand and watching the ball go across the pitch and come back again. And you just think this is so boring. Why am I paying 70, 80 quid for a ticket to sit here and watch this? And then we get a throw in and Ben White takes 20 minutes to take it. As we discussed the last time I was on here, it's just so tedious watching that kind of thing. So I think there is definitely some work to do in Arteta's head about why we're doing that and what the purpose is and how to make it actually work better. Because we've got the players who can play much better than that. And as other people have pointed out, we're kind of backwards in what we're doing because we take risks passing it across the back, but we don't take risks when we go forward in attacking positions where it matters less if you lose the ball because it's near the opponent's penalty area, and you should be taking risks because you have to break through the defence. So I don't think we're getting there, and I think, as you say, Kev, there's a section of the fan base who are quite vitriolic towards Arteta, and I hope that calms down because clearly he is a very good manager and he is learning and he has learned a hell of a lot, as you say, and we have improved so much in the 6 years. And also, you hear little snippets that come out from the club about things that he's done and the way he handles the players, and ideas he's got about team spirit and using sort of having a kind of holistic approach to training where it's not just what happens on the field, it's how people feel, it's how they react to each other, it's how they behave with each other, it's being a team, it's all being in it together, team spirit, everything like that. So he's clearly, very thoughtful about how he approaches it. I'm sorry if I'm boring you there, Simon.
Sorry.
I've
I've been running on about 5 hours sleep a night all week because Monday Burnley, Tuesday won the league. Yesterday had plans all day, had a big job to shoot today. So yeah, I had a quick nap before we recorded, to be honest with you. So I apologize for that.
Right. Well, Before I bore you further, let me just finish my point and say that I think if Arteta can make a few little adjustments to the tactics of how we play, or maybe buy a couple more players like Calafiori who don't seem to bother too much about hanging around in their prescribed position, be it left back or whatever, and happy to roam around the pitch in a Johan Cruyff style and make things happen, then all power to Calafiori. I say, let him get on with it, and a couple more like that, and we'll have a much more exciting game to watch next season.
There was a point in the Burnley game where Calafiore was playing as a right-sided forward, and, and I
Yeah.
was like, what on earth is happening here? But do you not feel like the sort of lack of cohesion up front is a big part of that? Is not having our best attackers fit? Because there was
Mm.
a stat a few weeks ago that Saka, Ødegaard, and Havertz, who are probably our three best attackers, hadn't played together since 2024. And I just think that maybe Mikel has looked at it and thought, look, we've had a lot of injuries up front. We've got the best keeper, we've got the best defense. Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, the best defenders in the league. Why don't we lean on that a bit and trust that will get us home? And I think that there's just so many good teams now. Going back to 59 points currently being good enough for Champions League with one game to play. There's so many teams taking points off each other that I just think if you do play that 22-23 attacking football, which is great to watch, I think in today's environment, you end up with a lot of 2-2s and 3-3s, and you probably end up dropping quite a lot of points. So he goes to make it tight, knowing that we'll have the difference makers to sneak most games. If you look at some of the games we drew, like there was Sunderland and who else did we draw away to? We
Well,
drew a couple of away games that we were winning very late, and we
Wolves.
conceded
Wolves.
Villa,
Yeah. Yeah.
Wolves,
Wolves.
Sunderland.
Yeah.
We were within a fraction of getting results in all of those games. So his philosophy, I think, is if you do this, it'll work, you know, four times out of five. There'll be the odd one that ends up 2-2 or you lose or draw, but more often than not, we'll get over the line because we've got better players than the opponent.
I think the other interesting thing about Arteta, it's not been mentioned. I don't think it's been mentioned even in Arsenal blogs over the last few days at all. Last season, if you said why didn't we do very well last season, people would have said the two things are we had loads of serious injuries and we had loads of red cards and sendings off and everything. You look at the Fair Play League now, Arsenal aren't just top of it. They're miles top of it. They haven't had a
Yeah.
red card all season.
We
We
haven't
haven't
conceded a penalty either,
we haven't
Peter. Do you see
conceded a
that
penalty.
statistic? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a hell of a statistic. Uh, when I mentioned this to a friend of mine today who's a Liverpool fan, it said, "Oh, well, it just shows you referees are biased in favour of Arsenal. So you can't win these things." But I think he's a real, I mean, he's probably a guy who's very hard to live with because he's a real attention to detail guy. But I think he looks at what's happening and looks at where we need to improve. And we desperately, I think we still need to improve our attacking options next season, and we can do that, I think. Um, People are talking about Krupi already. And Alvarez has been mentioned. A couple of very exciting news. I think we could have had a much more successful season if we just signed Semenyo in August instead of Madueke. Um, I don't know whether he was available then, but I mean, these things can be tweaked. So I think if we can improve the quality of our attacking play, I think we're extremely well set.
Okay. So let's look ahead to the Champions League because our next podcast will be recorded after that. How do you think Arteta is going to approach that game? Because the thing about Champions League is some of the games have been toe to toe, where both teams. I mean, the thing about Europe is that, especially in the group stage, draws weren't actually all that useful. So teams tended to try and actually win matches. And so you had more open games than we saw in the Premier League. And that's interestingly enough, on occasion, made us look far more entertaining and watchable simply because there was space to play. However, the stakes are a little bit higher because you've got a one-off game, you've got a final, and you're obviously playing a very good team. Now, in reality, I suspect there are two ways this thing could pan out. Number one, we're looking at, as long as we don't concede a goal, we can win this game, even if we need to do extra time and penalties. Or number two, you're going to sling what you have at us, and we don't think we can actually keep a clean sheet here. So let's just damn well go for it and give you something to think about. And interestingly enough, the way the two semi-final games panned out last season against PSG, they were actually open games because of the early PSG goal. So what do you believe is in Arteta's mind in terms of his approach to the game, including questions like, will he play Calafiori or Hincapié? Will he play Zubimendi or Lewis Skelly? Will he play both Eze and Odegaard? I mean, Havertz or Gyökeres, you imagine it's going to be Havertz. And I mean, basically, how do you think Arteta is thinking ahead of that match?
I don't think he's going to be very gung-ho about it. I think he will tend to go for safer, or what he perceives as safer options in selection. And I think he'll be trying to keep it tight and not concede. I think that, that's worked a lot of the season. So I can't see that it'll look like a hugely attacking team from us. I have to say, I think it might be a bit of or it might look as though it's going to be a bit of a grind, and maybe it will be a bit of a grind. Not that I mind that if we end up winning 1-0, but I don't think I just don't think he'd be very gung-ho about it, even given the fact he's got one trophy in the bag already. And you might think, well, maybe he'll loosen up and think it's worth gambling to try and win a second, because we're not going to end up with nothing. We can't end up with nothing. Look at what you've won already, so that's safe. So I just think it'll be on the cautious side. I think Zubimendi will probably play. I don't know whether Hincapié will play instead of Calafiori. I'm not really sure. I mean, Hincapié is also the kind of player who likes to get forward and drop his shorts and almost on the opposition goal line in some cases. So it's they're not hugely different, I don't think, though as we were just discussing, Calafiori does tend to roam perhaps more than most other players these days, but I just think it'll be safe. He'll try and be safe with it and not be too gung ho.
Okay. Any other opinion on that?
Yeah, I think he'll probably play Rice and Zubimendi would be what I would be expecting, and I think he'll play the first choice back four if Timber's available. That would be fantastic. I think
There's
he will go with.
No chance of that. I mean, I know he's looking like he can dance.
Have you read what they were saying today?
No, tell me.
Well, there was an interview with Timber a couple of hours ago, and he was saying he's trying to be fit for the day. And Arteta was saying there's still time to prove his fitness. So I don't think they're ruling it out. Mikel Merino was training today with the team, so it looks like he'll be ready to play some sort of role. Could possibly come on and score a header, maybe.
I mean, if there's any chance, I think they'll do half an hour at Palace. If there's any chance.
Yeah, let's see.
I'll
be interested to see. Yeah, I'll be interested to see. But they're not ruling him out, and I think he'll play. He always picks Calafiori when he can. Typically.
Well, the thing is about Calafiori is that he is. I mean, first the thing to say is that when he's doing that, playing at right side attacker, it's under instruction. Because the one thing you know about Arteta is players don't go off script. So he is a bit like Zinchenko in that he is encouraged to go into the mix. So the issue with Calafiori is, of course, that he's not always looks the best defensively. And
Do you think Calafiore might have been a striker when he was younger?
I
If
think,
ever there was a footballer who looks like he used to be a striker,
yeah,
it would have to be him, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think there's no way he's going to be gung ho, as Phil said, and I think Zubimendi is so experienced. I mean, he isn't as vertical in his passing as Lewis Skelly. Lewis Skelly's verticality in his passing, the way he passes forward is refreshing. I think he'll play Odegaard. I think he'll play Trossard wide because Trossard's playing very well at the moment. And I think it's strange playing how I think you may be right about Havertz, but I was very critical on here a few months ago about Gyökeres. Gyökeres actually has improved enormously, and it might actually be the sort of wild card that could really trouble the PSG defence. I'm
Yeah.
sure that they'll both have a part to play at some stage during it. So I think it'll be a pretty cat and mouse game. They are a brilliant side, and you have to keep those two wingers very and Doué and Kvaratskhelia, you have to keep them quiet because they're absolutely brilliant. But a way to keep them quiet is not to go sort of gung ho into attack for 45 minutes to try and blast off the face of the earth because I think they're just too good. So I think you have to be a bit sensible about it, and we may see Rice playing a slightly more withdrawn role on that basis.
He does bring the odd surprise, Mikel Arteta, though, with his
does.
team every
Yeah.
now and then. So, some of them unsuccessful and some of them successful. So, I wouldn't be too surprised if I got a surprise when I saw the team sheet and he did. I mean, I think Lewis Skelly playing midfield is one of the biggest surprises of
Mm.
the last few years, isn't it? I was kind of shocked that he did it the first time. And then I was even more shocked when he did it against Atletico as well. But he is sometimes quite bold. So, yeah, who knows?
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's Maxi Dauman on the wing then. Yeah.
Well, it would
And
be a
Kepa in goal, presumably.
sub, I think it's fair to say. But the other thing to remember is it is a 16-man game, and especially if it goes to extra time. I think you can have a sixth sub from memory if you go to extra time. So,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I will. I think I might have said this on this podcast before. I can't remember, but I have had a vision of Arsenal winning this final 1-0, and the goal is scored by Martinelli. Okay, it's just an image in my head which has been there for a few months, and I'd take it now if you gave it to me. So let's see what happens there.
I think most Arsenal
I
fans
think
would take that.
I don't think there's anyone who wouldn't take it, is there?
We shall see.
Yeah, I don't like Martinelli. I don't want him scoring the goal. Let somebody
Yeah.
else.
How dare he? Yeah.
Well, I mean, as I wrote in my piece on us actually winning the title, that the Martinelli goal against Man City at home earlier this season, which was in the 3rd minute of injury time, and the nature of the finish was, for me personally, the moment of the season because of its significance in the points division between the two sides. So, Gabby, he can deliver occasionally, even if he doesn't very often. That's all I will say.
No, true.
Yes. I mean, the great thing about Budapest, in all fairness, is that it is a free hit, really, isn't it? We almost,
I think the pressure's come off us,
we
hasn't it, in
don't
the
care,
last?
but we
Yeah.
almost can say it doesn't matter too much if we don't win because of what happened this
It
week.
would be a lot worse if we hadn't, or yeah, if we didn't win the title first. Yeah, then the pressure would really be on, and I think the game would be incredibly boring because I just don't think Arsenal would even take any risk whatsoever. It would be 120 minutes, and perhaps we can win on penalties. So yeah, it's a big relief to have a trophy in the bag already.
Yeah, and I feel like losing to the best, the established best team in football, if you were to lose a one-off game to them, wouldn't really be, there wouldn't really be too much wrong with that. But it's a one-off game. We've got the best keeper, we've got the best defense, we've got a shot. I kind of feel like in the past, I always felt like Bayern Munich and PSG playing easy domestic games was a huge disadvantage because it would mean that when it got ratcheted up a notch in the Champions League, they would struggle. But what they do now, it's so sort of artificial because they just rest all their best players in the league. I think I read that quite a lot of their stars have played a third of the minutes that ours have in the domestic league. So they just play half the game, then they come off. And
Dembele
there's
started
something,
9 games this season
yeah, there's
in
something
the league.
deeply artificial about that. It's very engineered. It's kind of weird, but what they've started doing is resting their players for Europe. So we'll see what happens. But I just wanted to mention moment of the season there, Kevin. West Ham away. The fact that I paid money to have that experience, which was one of the most horrific 2 hours of my entire life. The fact that I paid money to have that is quite sort of funny in itself. But the noise when the ball hit the net from where I was in the stadium, there was a split second before the fans realised it had gone in, and the noise the ball hit when the ball hit the net, a bit like in cricket when someone takes the bail off, and you get
Mm.
when Broad or Anderson smashes the wicket, and it makes that incredibly satisfying sound. There was a deeply satisfying noise of the ball hitting the net. So for me, that's the moment of the season. And for where we live, Kevin, we can obviously I can get the 97 bus home in 20 minutes, which I did, and we got on the bus, and my friend turned to me and said, "I think we just won the league." So that's my moment of the season, climbing back on the 97.
Okay,
Yeah,
I cite for the
if
record.
if you're doing moments of the season, I'm going to be very boring, but I just thought that Dalman goal against Everton
Yeah.
was just so euphoric. When you see this kid dribbling through, and you think he's going to run that ball into the net. And it had been such a tight game, and the whole crowd was just going bananas. That was a fabulous moment, I think, as well.
Yeah,
But you'd
Dowman's
expect,
is the best moment.
yeah,
Dowman's is the best overall moment, but my personal favourite was just because there wasn't that many of us there at West Ham, so
no,
we had
no.
that very extremely stressful 2 hours of our lives.
Mhm. Mm.
Bill, do you have one?
The Diamond goal, yeah, absolutely brilliant. I sit quite near the front, so I try and make my way nearer the back to normally get out. I don't go until the final whistle goes, but I'm kind of edging up the stairs and trying not to look conspicuous to the steward. So I was up the back when Dowman went through and scored that, and everybody was just jumping around madly. It was just unbelievable. That and thrashing Tottenham is always good. I really enjoyed that one as well.
Twice.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't at the
Home or
away game.
away? Which one did you enjoy the most?
Well, I enjoyed them both, but I was at the home game and I wasn't at the away game. So I'll go with the home one. But some good moments amongst the somewhat dodgy performances in between.
In terms of the tense victories, we were talking about this on Tuesday. I was saying I think West Ham was the most stressful, followed by Everton, because people forget it was 88 minutes on the clock when Gyökeres broke the deadlock against
Mm.
Everton. That was
Was
in
it?
both those games. I was doing the arithmetic of what happens if we draw, what's the goal difference, what's the goal scored, etc. And then after that, there's Newcastle was fairly stressful, and Burnley wasn't really that stressful, but it felt like it in the moment because I quite often ring my dad after the games and he watches on TV and he watches quite cold. He doesn't have the same level of emotion. And I call him and he usually just says, "Yeah, that was an easy win, wasn't it?" And I'm like, "Well, in the stadium, it
Mm.
felt like it felt very different, but he watches it in a different way." So, yeah, I think West Ham, most stressful ever, I think, followed by Everton.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, one thing to think about in going back to Europe, I mean, we came top of the European League here. We're the only team to win 8 out of 8, and we've we've taken care of the three knockout games pretty professionally. We didn't beat, we last year we beat PSV, was it 7-1 away, and we beat Sporting Lisbon. But we beat Bayern Munich 3-1. That was a heck of a performance. And we beat Inter Milan in Milan
3-1. Yeah.
with a side that we rotated quite significantly, and we beat Atletico the first time 4-0. So we have got the ability to change up a gear or two in Europe, and yeah, I mean our European record this season has been phenomenal. So I wouldn't write us off too easily.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that's the case. Okay, I'm just going to, because we're going for over an hour now, but I'm just going to go around and just ask you for your player of the season at Arsenal, because there are a few candidates. But I'm going to start with you, Simon.
I've been wavering on this. I mean, it's one of Rice, Gabriel, or Raya, isn't it? Realistically, I'm going to go for Declan Rice. He was fantastic against Burnley. He was just brilliant in that game, and I just think he's an 8 out of 10 every week. You can play him in different places. He's developed since we got him, and yeah, I'm going to go Declan Rice.
Okay, Phil.
Yeah, I mean it's the same big three. I would go Raya, I think, on the basis of that save against West Ham, where he stopped it with his leg when the guy was clean through. Yeah, I think he for me he just overtook Rice in that moment. But again, you can't argue against Gabriel either because he's been immense at the back and he's scored quite a few goals from corners and so on up front. So it's really very, very close. If I've got to say one name, I'll say Raya because he's made some stunning saves, including the West Ham one.
Okay, Peter, I feel like you've got the casting votes here.
Yeah, I'd add a couple of players to sort of sort out. I think because he's been injured recently, Timber has probably dropped off consciousness. But Timber is the best right back
Yeah,
in Europe, I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
and he's very important to that defence, and he scores a lot of goals. And I also think Saliba has had a very, very
I
good
was going to
season as
mention
well.
Saliba. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
quietly brilliant every
yeah,
every week. He's just quietly effective, and he's not as
that,
eye-catching.
that's right. Um, and Raya is brilliant. But Raya does do my head in sometimes with him fanning around with the ball at his feet. Just occasionally he then passes to someone 30 yards away in an opposition shirt. But he's a wonderful keeper. But I would have to go with Declan Rice. I think Declan, and you said it all, Simon. I mean, he's an incredible player. I mean, we have this song, don't we, that we got him half price. It isn't far from the truth, actually. I mean, if you knew how good he was going to be, what would you have paid for him? If you could afford to. He has been quite superb. And it seems odd to me that he's not the captain of the side. I know that doesn't mean what it used to mean when Tony Adams was captain, or Frank McClintock, but he's very much the heartbeat of that side. And
It's a bit like when Vieira wasn't officially the captain because Adams was still at the club, but he
yeah,
kind of was the leader of the team on the field. It's a bit
yeah,
like that with Declan Rice.
yeah. So I go for Declan. I think he should be footballer of the year. How Fernandez is footballer of the year? God preserve me. Doesn't that show the bias towards northern clubs?
I don't know if you've seen the actual underlying figures underneath his 20 assists. It's something like 14 of them are from set plays.
Yeah, yeah,
So of those 20 assists, I think only 6 or 7 are from open play. I think there's a hell of a lot of corners and free kicks in there. So to me, you know, comparing Fernandez to Kevin De Bruyne and Thierry Henry is kind of a crazy idea in itself.
sacrilege.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the two of the best players ever. But one thing I'd like to ask you, slightly older fans than myself, is how do you think David Raya compares with Arsenal goalkeepers? Because I was a kid in the late 80s. I watched Seaman as a teenager. He left Arsenal when I think I was in my early 20s. I'm I'm starting to think that he might be better than David Seaman. Obviously, he hasn't had the longevity yet that Seaman had. How do you think he compares to Wilson, Jennings, Seaman, etc.?
Well, I'm going to go first, and I'm going to say that Seaman conceded goals against Naeem and Ronaldinho, I think.
Ronald Koeman, remember that one?
Well, no,
Mm.
I'm not going to blame him for Koeman actually, because that was just a brilliant free kick. But I don't think Raya would be caught out in the way that
Yeah.
Seaman was for those two goals. So,
Got caught out by Richarlison this season, didn't he?
Oh yeah,
oh
yeah,
no, I mean, it wasn't quite the same, in all fairness,
Mm.
because we lost the ball. The point about the
yeah,
Seaman ones was Brazil had the ball. There
yeah.
wasn't any loss of possession there. They were just in possession. So the thing about the Richarlison one was we were dispossessed, and another player let down the team by losing the ball to Richarlison.
The only kind of bad goals he really concedes are passing out that goes wrong. Are really the
Yeah.
only sort of
Yeah,
bad goals.
that's the weak
But
spot, isn't it?
yeah,
That is the
yeah.
weak spot.
Which
But
Seaman never had to do. Seaman never
they're
had to play
clearly
that.
instructed to do it. They're
Yeah,
very clearly instructed and told to do it. And it's often not his fault. There was the Zubamendi one against United. There was a really interesting interview with Harry Maguire came out this week, and he was talking about Arsenal winning the league. And he was saying, look, when we played them, it took a freak own goal. Sorry, a freak back pass that gave us a goal and two worldies to score against them. And he was basically saying they're so well organized and so disciplined that if you're not scoring two 30-yarders, you're probably not going to get a lot of joy. And I found that from a professional saying that quite an interesting thing for a player on another team to be saying.
Mm. Yeah, Gillian Ballaghay made a comment that surprised me and said, you know, Arsenal get so much stick. He said if you knew how they were perceived on the continent as the
I
hardest
saw
side
that.
in
Yeah, I saw
Europe to
that.
play against. I think that's an interesting comment as well. You know that we sometimes perhaps underestimate the quality of what they do. But to answer your question, which is a very good one, very difficult one, um, Jennings was slightly past his best. Bob Wilson, I know quite well, but I don't think he was in the same class, and I
Yeah.
think he'd agree. Um, but I think Seaman in his first season was transformational. But I think Raya is getting closer and closer to him, and because I think Raya is still getting better. So I think I'd just say Seaman, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here next year and saying Raya's even better than Seaman.
If Raya keeps building his highlight reel that he has from
Mm.
from this season, do you remember that save at home to Brighton at
Oh, yeah,
Christmas? It's incredible, yeah.
phenomenal,
And
phenomenal.
there's been a whole catalogue of those. So I think he's getting pretty close to if he can do another 3 years of what he's done already, I think he'll be pretty close to the best keepers that we've seen in England, really.
Mm, mm. Yeah,
Bill, your
right.
opinion on Seaman or Raya?
Well, if Raya can eliminate the weak spot of occasional misplaced passing out from the back, then I think he's better. I mean, Seaman, as you pointed out, had his weak spot of long high balls coming to him out of the sun, or out of the floodlights, as the case may be. But I mean, Seaman was a phenomenal keeper as well, and had a great presence, a really big physical presence, and was just a great keeper for many years, and he didn't seem to go downhill until after he'd left us, in my opinion. So and he lasted a very long time. So
What
from that
about
point
the
of view,
ponytail era towards the
oh
end?
well, yeah, I mean hairstyles, yes. I mean he's got to have the marks knocked off for that. But yeah, they're both great. But I think, as Simon said, if Raya can carry on for another 2 or 3 years the way he has done, then yeah, he's right up there with the best.
I feel like the playing out from the back isn't necessarily a weakness because all the top keepers all get caught out occasionally like that. If you look when Edison was at City, he was,
Mm,
known as the best ball playing keeper in the world, and he would make the odd howler. Allison at Liverpool. I think I'm not sure if there's any keeper in the world. I mean, Speaking of PSG, they got rid of Donnarumma because he couldn't play out. City wanted to play out from the back keeper, bought one, and then replaced him with someone who couldn't do it. And
Mm.
then that PSG keeper is a little bit of a weak link from what I've seen. I mean, he makes a few. He gets caught out a little bit. Is all I'm saying.
The
So
Russian guy, yeah.
yeah, unconvincing is the word I'd probably use.
Mm.
Well, I mean, the
Mm.
one thing we can say is that PSG defensively are not exactly convincing. They win
If you remember the semi-final last year, Kevin, Donnarumma won them that tie.
absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Mm.
So,
we could easily have scored 3 or 4 goals in that tie.
The save he
If
made from
not,
Odegaard was sensational, wasn't it?
yeah, in the second leg, yeah.
so some cause for optimism. Well, gentlemen, we have done almost an hour and a quarter, so I'm going to wrap up here and say to our listeners that our next podcast will be on the probably the Thursday after Champions League final. So hopefully we'll be in as buoyant a mood as we are this evening. But it's certainly been a pleasure to discuss the fact that Arsenal have ended that 22-year run and finally landed the Premier League for the first time since the Invincibles. And my thanks to Peter, Phil, and Simon for talking about it tonight. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.